Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mojo podcast. This is my podcast about knitting, and my name is Joanne, and I'm coming to you, as I always do, from my home in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I want to give a big, warm welcome to both all my returning viewers and any new viewers that might be joining me for the first time today. I hope that you'll enjoy my podcast and get something interesting out of it about knitting and my knitting and how it might apply to your knitting. And I hope if you do like it that you'll consider subscribing, and both new and returning viewers, I hope if you enjoy this episode you'll give it a thumbs up on the little down bar below here on YouTube. That always helps podcasts, myself and other podcasts that you like as well, to get higher up into the feeds of recommended podcasts for other people. So yeah, today is I blanked. Today is Monday, February 19th, and it's been about 3.5 weeks since I last podcasted. As I've said before, certain times of the year, particularly in the winter, this time of the year, my life gets super, super busy. I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end, and it just makes it harder for me to find a time and day where I can sit down and do a podcast. I podcast here in my dining room, and so I kind of have to do it when my husband's out of the house. And yeah, it's between his schedule and mine finding time, and I like to do it in the daytime, which it is now. It is the early afternoon on Monday, which is my day off, and he actually is out today, which is great because he is a professional musician, so he doesn't go out to work 9 to 5 or anything like that. He works various times and days, and in a lot of cases he works nights. Obviously, as a musician, he plays a lot of gigs in the evening. So finding a daytime when I'm home and he's not home gets challenging when my schedule is busy. So that's why it's been a bit of a while since I podcasted last, and one of my podcasts are a little farther between these days. I'm hoping that that'll turn around fairly soon as my schedule gets a little lighter in a couple of weeks. Anyway, enough of that babbling on. I'm going to dive right into talking about knitting. And today I have a finished object for you that I am wearing. I'll take it off in a second so I can show it to you a little bit more. But this is my Penguono by Stephen West. And I was working on this the last time I podcast. I showed it to you, and I finished it about 2 weeks, I think, 10 days to 2 weeks after I podcasted last. I was pretty monogamous on this, and I'm actually been pretty monogamous on my next project. Sorry, my nose is itching, and it's because my Penguono has a lot of, it's got mohair in it, and the mohair fibers tend to fly around a little bit, and I think I've got one on my nose that's making me itchy, which will then make my nose red. Awesome. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, I was saying, that I was pretty monogamous finishing this, and I've been pretty monogamous on my next project that I'm working on. So I don't have a whole ton of knitting to show you. I just have a few things, but we'll talk about those a bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a few acquisitions I've got and a little bit about the cowl we've got going on. So yeah, as I said, this is my Penguono. It is patterned by Stephen West. It is a very bulky weight pullover. I'm going to take it off now so that I can show you a little bit more about what it looks like. As I wrestle it off here, it was really fun to knit. I really enjoyed it. It's like a lot of Stephen West patterns, it's a pretty modular knit, meaning you knit a piece and then you add another piece onto that, and you add another piece on, and you add another piece on, and eventually it comes together into a garment. But it is not your traditional sort of garment structure. A lot of sweaters, other knit in pieces, so you knit the back, and then in a separate piece you knit the front, and then you knit the sleeves, and you join that all together. Or top down, often it's you start with the neckline and you just knit down the sweater, and then you come back and knit the sleeves on. Or bottom up in the round, also where you knit the body up, knit the sleeves, join them, etc. This is quite a bit different in its construction from that. It was a lot of fun to knit. The pattern is very interesting. there are multiple sizes available, but the sizes are based on what weight of yarn you use and what weight of needle you use, and therefore what gauge you're getting. So you make the pattern larger or smaller just depending on your gauge. So the pattern is written for one set of numbers of stitches all the way through, and it doesn't, there's not, you know, 12 stitches for this size and 14 stitches for that size, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just one number, you know, it's just 12 stitches for every size, but the size of your sweater is going to be different depending on obviously how many inches those 12 stitches are giving you. So, and I'm using 12, it's just arbitrary number out of my head, but I knit what is essentially the largest size in it by using what I think amounts essentially to a bulky weight yarn. I used yarns held together as he recommends, and I knit this on a 6mm or 6.5, maybe 6.5 millimeter needle, and it is huge. I will say it is huge and it is heavy. So here, this is the back. You see the bottom. If I turn it around, sleeve. It's short sleeves, although with the fit they do come down past my elbows because it's large. Collar and fronts, and it is a drapey front that folds over kind of kimono style. I hope you can sort of see that. And each of the sections, the modular sections, I knit essentially in a different color. His pattern, the example that he shows in the pattern, and a lot of other people's have a lot more stripes in them. I didn't really do a lot of striping. I knit in solid sort of color blocking chunks. But what I did, how I knit it was using 3 yarns held together all the way through, and I used one yarn which was Madeline Tosh Pashmina in the Antler colorway, which is just a sort of creamy neutral. And I used that yarn throughout the entire sweater. So all of those all the sections have that pashmina, which is a merino cashmere, might be a merino cashmere nylon, but it's definitely merino and cashmere, all the way through all the sections. And then I switched out for each color, like as you can see here. I added in a different fingering weight, so it's merino the pashmina, which is a sport weight, and then I held that with a fingering weight, and I held it with a mohair, silk mohair blend in lace weight. So those 3 yarns held together all the way through the sweater. And so in this section, for example, here what you see is the pashmina, and then I had a hedgehog fibers banana leaf, I think is the color, which is a sort of yellow and green. Not as green as it looks now in the final color, because additionally then I held a mohair, an olivey green rowan, I think, mohair with that, and that gives it the real greenish yellowy tint. Well, the yarn gives it the yellowy tint, and then the mohair kind of pops the greens that are actually in that yarn as well. So in this section, for example, I was using the pashmina, and then I used I can't remember the yarn I used here, but it was the brand of the yarn, the dyer, but it was a fingering weight that was predominantly also cream colored with these little pops of pink and orange in them. And then I used a very pale pink mohair. So that made it a much lighter color there. Here I used a slightly, again, a sort of creamy colored, pretty much all the fingering weights I used were kind of a cream colored base to match with the antler color of the pashmina, but then they had different sort of pops of color and stuff in them. And then I paired that with mohairs that sort of mix. So there's this mohair, this was a slightly purpley yarn, and the mohair with that was a pale purple. The welts that go down the back here was the color Monarch from Hedgehog Fibers, which is a sort of an orangey, pale orangey color. And then I paired that with a very, very bright sort of burnt orange mohair. I think that was from Art Yarns, that one. I did the same here, except that it's a paler orange mohair here. It's not this same bright one as that. It's the same pashmina color, the antler. It's the same hedgehog fibers, the monarch, but then it's a paler orange mohair. So yeah, so I just kept switching that up all over the place. It ends with an I-cord bind off all the way around the bottom and up the fronts and across the collar and stuff, which took me about a day and a half to 2 days, probably 2 days to do. And I did that all in the green that you see there. Yeah, and I really like it. I really enjoyed knitting it. It was a super fun knit. It's interesting. It is heavy. I think the combination of the 3 yarns held together, but particularly the pashmina, which I find to be a weighty yarn. I think it's a fairly high twist, and the cashmere in it and the high twist in the yarn makes it a very sort of solid, sturdy, weighty yarn, plump, but makes the whole sweater kind of heavy. It's definitely a jacket kind of garment. Like I wouldn't put this under a coat. It wouldn't fit really under a coat, but it's great. It's going to be great, you know, around the house when it's chilly. And it's going to be probably great in the spring, just as a, you know, something to throw over to go out in like a long sleeve t-shirt or whatever. For that purpose, I kind of wish it had pockets in it, which I suppose I could add, but I don't know if I'm going to. But it is a big, bulky, heavy weight, very large. Let's see if I can show you like how big across the back. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, you can kind of see. It is a big honkin' sweater. And it is very fluffy because of the mohair. And as I was saying earlier, it does tend to get, it was funny when I was knitting on this and as it got bigger and bigger, and the way he has you construct it, you're knitting the back and then you're knitting out. So for a long time, it keeps growing this way. At one point, my husband looked at it while I was sitting there working on it. It was in my lap and he said, "Are you making a blanket?" Because that's what it looked like, this big, huge stretch of fabric in my lap. So as it was sitting in my lap and I was working on it, and one day I had a black shirt on and I looked down, and all down the front of my black shirt looked like I had a pet. I haven't had cats I had cats for most of my adult years, but our last cat passed away a couple of years ago and we haven't had another cat since then. Multiple reasons, mostly I love cats and I really miss having a cat, but life's easier a little bit, like for traveling and things like that without a pet. Anyway, I digress. This is not about pets. But it looked like I had a pet. It looked like I had a cat. I had all of this mohair fur kind of all down the front of my black shirt, as you would if you had like a light colored cat that had been rolling on you. Luckily, a lint brush, actually my gleaner, the lint brush side of my gleaner took it all off quite nicely. But so it is going to shed a bit for a while, and I don't know if you probably can't see that. Oh, you maybe can a little bit on the camera. Even if I just brush my fingers on it, sort of hunks of mohair like that come off. And yeah, I haven't given it a bath yet, and I'm a little afraid to give it a bath because it's so large and I'm heavy, and I'm afraid that it's going to grow and get even larger. But it is going to shed for a while, I think. And the other thing that was interesting, so you end up with a lot of ends to this piece when you're finished because of all of the pieces that you're adding on and the color changes and stuff. I ended up with tons and tons of ends to weave in. And I've left them all, I've woven them all in, and I've cut them, but I've just left them all kind of inside sticking out a bit that way because the yarn, with that mohair cashmere, well, the mohair is good because the mohair actually does help your yarn stick to itself. Mohair is quite grabby, which is great, but the silk that's in there and this that's in the mohair silk, and most of the mohair silks were like a 60-40 or a 70-30 blend, and I didn't want the ends poking out the right side of so I left them with little bits on the inside, which nobody will know is there except for me. Anyway, so that's my finished object, and I'm very happy to have this off the needles. I started this last fall, I think, and worked on it a little bit and then put it aside for quite a while, and was really happy to pick it up and finish it off. And I'm also really, really happy that this is the second finished sweater already of 2018. I finished in January the sweater for my friend Denise, and then I finished this. So I'm feeling good about the sweater knitting, which is really where my heart is at the moment. I'll put that aside now. The other, I'm calling this a finished object. It's not quite a finished object, but you'll see why in a minute. The only other knitting other than I have another sweater project that I've cast on, and I will show you where I'm at with that in a minute in my works in progress. But the only other thing really that I've been working on is a couple pairs of vanilla socks. Unfortunately, my pattern socks haven't got any love because when I've been home in the evenings, I've been working on the sweaters, and then the vanilla socks have been my work and bus and all that kind of doctor appointment and whatever. They've been my knitting for that. So that's the two things that are going on, is a sweater and some vanilla socks. I really do want to get back to my pattern socks. I have 2 pairs on the needles, and I have a third one I really want to cast on, which is the first Helen Stewart pair in her sock club for the year. But as I said, at the moment, all of my focus is on my sweater. So, but I knit this pair of socks mostly in January, and it is a pair. There are 2, and as I said, I'm calling them a finished object because I won't show them again on the podcast because I'm giving them to my friend Val, who's directing the play that I'm working on right now, and so I want to be able to give these away to her, and that'll happen before I podcast next. But so just a pair of striped vanilla socks. This is Patton's Croy in the, I think, blue rag stripe is the colorway. I really like Patton's Croy. I really like working with it. It makes such a sturdy sock if you knit it at this 2.25 millimeter needle is what I used, and it makes it quite dense, which means they'll hold up nicely, but it's still soft enough. Like they feel like they would feel really nice on your feet. And then I did an afterthought heel so that I wouldn't mess up the striping in the leg. So just knit a tube, put a piece of waist yard in where I wanted the heel to go, and finished it up. So that's what this one is. This one hasn't got its heel yet. So they're not really quite finished, but they're so close to being finished. This afternoon I'll put the heel in on this, and they'll be done and ready to be gifted. I used also Patton's Croy for the heel, although this is just ever so slightly bulkier weight than this, which is fine. It makes an even sturdier fabric than this is. So that's good because that heel will hold up. It's pretty dense. So anyway, yeah, just nice pair of plain vanilla socks. And while we're on the topic of vanilla socks, I'll show you the ones that I cast on after I got through those. I didn't want to knit the the reason the other one hasn't got its heel yet is I didn't want to knit the afterthought heel at work. It's always easiest for me knitting, if I'm knitting at work when I'm rehearsing a play, to have something that I don't have to pay any attention to. The vanilla socks are great because I can just go around and be doing my, paying attention to my job, but keeping my hands busy. So I cast on another pair of vanilla socks. These and these are out of the Regia, Arnie and Carlos, one of their design line. I really like this yarn. It's really pretty. This actually has a heel flap and gusset. So I was knitting this at work, and a heel flap and gusset I can pretty much knit without paying attention. So I just kept doing this while I was at work. So I'm about halfway through the foot of this one. On magic loop, as I always do. This is 64 stitches on a 2.25 millimeter needle. I'm using carbons. And these I'm knitting for my mother. It was interesting. My mother came over to visit me last Monday when I had a day off. She came by and had coffee with me. And she was wearing a pair of socks I'd knit her. And they had a big hole in the heel. She'd blown out the heel right when you do the heel turn, right where you're turning the heel and you're doing the sort of wrap and turn kind of that you do in the heel turn. it had blown out along there. And then she proceeded to tell me that pretty much every pair of hand knit socks that I had made for her, she'd blown out in the heel, in the same place, which says to me that it's something about the way she moves, like how she moves her heel when she walks and how it creates friction inside her shoes. And she wears her hand knit socks a lot, which is great. And she walks a lot. And in the winter, she wears boots because it's snowy and cold. And her boots are obviously rubbing right along that kind of seam where you turn the heel. And excuse me, so she's blown out a bunch of pairs of socks in that heel. And it's not really a great place to try to mend socks because it'd be easy to wear out again because it's obviously a friction point for her, and it's a place where you've got kind of like a seam, and it would feel bulky, I feel, to mend it. So what I decided is I've got to knit her some new socks, and she said the only pair that she has that hasn't got a hole, I think she's got about 6 or 7 pairs of socks from me. The only ones that haven't blown out in the heel are a pair I knit out of opal. And so I thought, well, I'm going to knit her some, and I'm going to use the sturdier, heartier, what else do we call it? More rustic, whatever all those words are that we use for like good German sock yarns and stuff made out of wool blends that aren't merino, basically, because they seem to hold up better. I know my husband's socks knit out of these kinds of yarns hold up better for him, and as witnessed by my mom saying that was the one pair that hadn't blown out. So I've decided that the next few pairs of socks I'm going to knit several new pairs of socks for her to replenish her stock, because clearly she likes to wear them. And I'm going to knit them all out of the sturdier commercial yarn. I've got a little bit more Onion Carlos. I've got quite a few skeins of opal and yarns like that in my stash that should hold up better. So this is the first of project new socks for mom, I guess we would say. I'm enjoying knitting this just because the yarn is so pretty. It's so nice, and I know she'll really like these too. So that's been basically living at work as my work knitting. And then the other new project that I've started since I recorded last is another new sweater. It is the first, excuse me while I adjust my chair a little bit. It's the first of the sweater patterns that I picked out for my sort of Make 9 project and for the 2018 Year of the Sweater project, which is a hashtag on Instagram that you should check out if you haven't. There's a lot of beautiful sweater inspiration there. I picked this pattern, which is the Beaumont Jumper. It's a pattern from Blacker Yarns. It is designed by Sonia Barjalowska, I believe is how you pronounce that. Let's see if I can show you her name. Sonia Barjalowska or Barjalowska. Anyway, and it's designed for Blacker Yarns, obviously using their yarn. I'm not using their yarn, but it's a really lovely pattern. I just think it's super, super cute. So, and I looked at it for a while, so the sort of story of the sweater is interesting. So I picked out the pattern. I knew I really liked this. I knew it was something I wanted to knit. I like this sort of style of, I wear a lot of clothes that kind of have this A-line that float away from somewhere around the bust through your midsection. Mine will be a little bit longer, I think, than shown in the picture here. And I bought yarn specifically for this last fall, the Knit Picks, when they had their Black Friday sale. I bought some yarn because I knew that I had wanted for a while to knit a sweater with Knit Picks, the Stroll Tweed Fingering, which is this. And this is the color I'm using, which is Down Heather. I actually knit myself a pair of mittens out of this a couple of years ago. I really love them. I wear them all the time. And this yarn has held up really, really well in those mittens. Despite the fact that, like I said, I've worn them tons over the last couple of winters. They almost look still brand new, which is great. I love tweed yarns. I love the little neps and flecks of color in tweed. I really love this soft, downy, sort of gray beige color. And I thought this would be really pretty. So, and the pattern on Ravelry said fingering weight, so it's great. I got myself for a really good price because of that sale, enough to do this sweater. However, when I started trying to figure out gauge, I realized, and I looked a little closer at the pattern, I realized that the yarns that they reference on the pattern page, when you buy the pattern, the two blacker yarns, both, one of them is actually listed as a sport weight, that's the brushwork, and the one that's listed as a 4-ply, the yardage still sort of indicates that it's either a heavier fingering, it's kind of in a heavier fingering weight to a sport weight. So I've struggled a little bit with gauge because I really wanted to use this sweater, or this yarn for this sweater, and I am knitting the largest size, and my gauge is still ever so slightly off. So I was getting row gauge, like the cable section. So talk a little bit about how this sweater is constructed. This is how much I've got so far, which is a sleeve. And it's really fun construction. I've decided that this is maybe my favorite sweater construction because it you knit up from the sleeve, and you knit across and knit the yoke and knit down the other sleeve, and then you sew the sleeves up, and then you'll pick up stitches and knit down in a tube for the body. So by the time you get to the knitting a big tube of stockinette in the round, you're on the home stretch. That's the last of it. You've already done the sleeves. There's no, oh, now I got to go back and with this big bulky garment that I've 3/4 knit, I've got to pick up stitches and or do whatever and knit the sleeves. This is a great, you know, you start with the sleeves and half the sweater is done by the time you get through that. And that really works for me. I really like it. So, and the sleeve pattern obviously is cabled. The cables, you knit them up this way, but on the garment it's going to sit this way. They're really pretty little cables, and it's a really easy pattern. I was a little intimidated when I bought the pattern, and you look through and it's like, I don't know, maybe 16 pages or something of this pattern. And there's a ton of cable charts. And at first I was like, oh, what have I got myself into? But the cable charts are just all about the shaping of the sleeves and the shaping of the yoke and the neckline and stuff. Essentially, the cable pattern itself is a very simple 6-row repeat. And for 5 of those 6 rows, it's ribbing. It's like, on the right side, knit 4, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2. On the wrong side, purl 4, knit 2. And then on the 6th row, you do the cable. And it's the same cable all the way across to this is the middle of the sleeve. So it's the same cable all the way across to there, and then just the opposite direction cable all the way across to there. Really easy to memorize. You just have to look at the charts really for what different things you're doing. Like in this case, going up the sleeve, the different things you're doing to make the sleeve get wider. So very easy to knit. I can totally knit it while watching television. I actually did take this to work one day earlier this week, and I knit on some because I'm in this part, like the top of the shoulder and this part of the body, and so there's not even any shaping right at this point. It's just back and forth, same number of stitches. So yeah, and I can totally do it without the pattern. And I just have to knit this to a certain length, and then I start doing some shaping again. But as I said, my gauge, my row gauge, this direction for the cables is good, which is great because that's important so that the fit will be right. But my stitch gauge is not as, I'm not getting quite as many stitches to the inch as I should be getting. But there's a lot of, and I got sort of worried. I thought, oh, it'll be okay. And then I started looking, if I join up the sleeve here, this would be the cuff. I started feeling like that's pretty narrow. But then I was looking and going, there's a ton of stretch in that. And it's meant to be sort of form-fitting through the sleeves. So I think it's going to be fine. I think, like I've done this with it. I can't really show you. I wrapped it around and I've as if I was going to seam it, and it does fit without being super. It's not like a body stocking or anything. And I think that when I block it, it's going to open up to get me pretty much on gauge. So I think I'll be okay. What I did do, because I'm not quite at gauge, and because I do have a kind of meatier, fatter upper arm here, was I did actually add, I added an extra set of increases in the top section of the arm, so it's going to be a little wider through there than the pattern calls for. And then I also added an extra set of increases across here. So in total, I have 2 extra cable panels by the time I get on each side. 4 extra cable panels across the top there. which I'm quite confident as I now look at the sweater construction and how the charts work and stuff, that A, I can do those modifications without any difficulty. I've recalculated for the number of stitches I have and stuff, and it's all going to be fine. And B, I think that that will just give me that extra little bit of build-in. So you can see, so this is the part that I'm at now, which is sleeve, 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 and then that goes there. And I'm just knitting up to where the neckline will divide. So, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying knitting on this. I'm enjoying the pattern. As I said, it's pretty easy and mindless enough, but also interesting enough that, you know, it just keeps me going. It's like so many other things with stripes and cable repeats and things like that. You know, you're knitting away and you just think, oh, I'll just do one more repeat. So it's grown really fast. I started this about, maybe 10 days ago, and just in the evenings, at home watching TV, I've gotten all of that done on it, and I haven't even had a ton of knitting time on it. So it's coming along quite quickly, and then once I get to this part done and pick up for the body's just stocking that straight down. So you do a high-low hem a little bit and a folded hem at the bottom, but that's all really easy, and I'll be just stockinetting around, so that should fly by. I'm really looking forward to this. This is the most, I just really do like this yarn. As I said, you know, I've really enjoyed the mittens I have out of this. Oh, please excuse my phone. That's probably my husband calling me, but perhaps I will pause for 1 second. Sorry about that. I have to edit that little break there, and a little honest secret now with you about my podcasting skills. I rarely do much in the way of editing on my podcast because I'm kind of crap at editing, but I'll have to edit that. Now, I realized that's my husband calling. He's coming home from some recording he's been doing today, and he was going to go by the grocery store when he was done, so he needed to call and ask me what we needed. So I couldn't really just ignore his call. So I didn't, so I took a little break there and told him some groceries to get. Anyway, I think the last thing I was just saying about this was how much I like this yarn, that it is really, it's light. The Knit Picks Stroll Tweed is 10% Donegal tweed and 65% superwash merino and 25% nylon, but it's very soft. It's a really soft yarn, and it's squishy, and it feels light. This is going to be a light, airy, but soft, like totally next to skin, soft, comfortable sweater, which is why I don't mind that these sleeves are going to be fairly form-fitting, because it'll be fine to wear just like over a tank top or something. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So it's kind of all I want to work on right now, which is why I haven't gone back to my pattern socks, because I just want to make this sweater. And so that's it. That's all I've been knitting on. The last thing that I was going to talk to you a little bit about, last couple of things, sorry. As I said, we have a cal going. We do have a pattern socks cal, which is the ironic thing about the fact that I haven't worked on my pattern socks at all. And it's a year-long cal, and you can post finished objects into the finished object thread all year long. Any socks you cast on after January 1st, 2018, and that you finish before December 31st, 2018, anytime in the year, you can finish those socks and post them in the finished object thread. And every 2 months, so the first draw is coming up at the end of February. Every 2 months, I'm going to draw from that finished object thread, and everything that's in there is eligible, except if you've already won for that particular post, I'll redraw again, so it's somebody else. But other than that, if you've got multiple posts in there and you win for one post, your other posts are still eligible, just not the one you won for. So it behooves you to knit lots of pattern socks and get them in there. And I just thought it was a nice way to sort of indulge ourselves in pattern socks, try some things that may be different. Pattern socks are so great if you haven't tried lace before, if you haven't tried cables before, if you haven't tried color work before. It's a great, safe little kind of project to try out and develop your skills at. Like I learned so much about cabling. I learned so much about different kinds of pattern work. I learned so much about lace knitting through knitting pattern socks. So I highly recommend them as a fun and easy and not super time consuming way to try out some new techniques, get more adventurous, give yourself something fun and interesting to knit, all those good things, but it's still portable. So yeah, I highly encourage you to come along and join us. We've already got about 16 entries, I think, in the finished objects for January, February, and probably a few more before this month is over. And so from those up to anything posted up to the last day of February, till when I draw. Basically, I will just, because the thread stays open all year, I will draw on March 1st. So anything that gets posted before I draw on March 1st will be eligible for this round. I got a couple of prizes. I think the first round I'm going to do a pattern prize. I'm going to do a pattern sock prize. But I did have one prize, a yarn prize that's come in. This I will maybe save for the April draw. I ordered 2 skeins. I ordered a skein of yarn from Bluebird Yarn. She's a Canadian dyer, and I ordered a skein at Christmas that I really liked. I really liked her colors. I really enjoyed going on her website and seeing, and I liked her inspiration for her colors. She had sort of Jane Austen inspired colorways, some other classic literature ones. She had some ones that are inspired by Little House on the Prairie, by those books, which were books I loved when I was a child. And I just really enjoyed that about her what she uses inspiration for colors. Plus, I really liked her color sense. So I had ordered a skein for Christmas at Christmas time. I didn't knit with it this year. There'll probably be Christmas socks for next year. And I decided to order a couple more skeins, one for me and one that I'm going to give away as one of the prizes in this year-long cow. So these are the 2 I got. This is the one I got from me. I had a hard time picking which one was for me and which one I was going to give away. And initially I thought it was going to be the other way around, but something, this is called Letters from Home. And something about this I just love that there's this like light creamy base, but with this, got this little bits of red here, some green, darker greens there, and lots of speckles of green and gold and red, and sort of into the orange where the green or the red and gold, I think, probably mix. It's just really pretty. So I'm keeping that one for me. And the other one, which I also like, and which is going to come with a little mini skein, because she includes mini skeins in your order, which is great. This is one of her Little House on the Prairie colors. And this is called The Long Winter. And it's superwash merino nylon, an 80-20, 425 yards, and it's really, really pretty. Again, it's that nice creamy base with pops of red, lots of blue in this one, which I really like. I'm going to take it out of its sleeve. She hand writes, and these are sort of sewn together, which is really cute, and hand writes all these tags, which I really like. So yeah, there's that pretty, pretty yarn that some lucky person is going to win. And then there was this little beautiful little mini skein came with it, and I thought that would make a nice, I don't know how much yardage there is, but it would certainly, I think, make maybe cuffs and toes, or heels and toes, or just cuffs, whatever you wanted to do. But I thought that would go quite nicely with that. So that would be a prize for our cow. As I said, I'm thinking for the first round, I'm going to do a giveaway of one of Jacqueline Salem from the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast. She's got 2 patterns out now, sock patterns, I think. And I knit the first one and really loved them, and I'm working on the second one if I ever get back to it. And I really enjoy her patterns, so I'm thinking maybe I will give one of those patterns as the prize for the first round. First draw. Anyway, so please do come knit some pattern socks, join our cow, get involved, chat a little bit, get inspired by the lovely socks that are already popping up into that finished object thread. That's in the Ravelry group, which is under Creative Mojo, if you search the tab there for groups, and join the group. That's the only rule really, other than you have to start by the beginning of the year, finish by the end of the year. You have to be a member of the group, and you have to there has to be a pattern, and the self-striping doesn't count. It has to be color work or lace or texture or cables or something like that. And it doesn't have to be all over too. You can have some pattern on the sock. That's fine too. So anyway, so those came in the mail about a month ago, and I've been waiting to show those to you. And then the most recent thing I got was I ordered, I'm really excited about these. This is Tuku wool, which is a beautiful Finnish, as in from Finland, sort of rustic yarn, really good for color work. And there's a shop online, a Canadian shop called Farm to Cable, and she specializes in sort of small batch, organic, local to, they're imported, they're from the UK and from Europe, but she's supporting people who have organic, eco-friendly, what do you call it? Where supporting their own local culture, you know, people who are going from farm, obviously, to milling and dyeing. And there's one of the yarn brands there is all natural dyed. And she's got about 6 or 7 different companies she's carrying now. And excitingly, one of the ones she's carrying is Tuku wool, and I think she might be the only place where you can get it online in Canada. At least I hadn't found any other place yet. There's a couple places in the States where I could have ordered it from Finland, but I thought, you know, buy from Canada when I can. So I ordered 2 colors of this lovely fuchsia pink. This color is called Murai, M-U-R-A-I, and this lovely gray, which is Auri, A-U-R-I. And I'm going to do some color work mittens with these. I'm kind of, I'll be really honest with you, I'm a little bit scared of color work. I just haven't done very much of it yet, and it sort of intimidates me, and just getting the tension right on and stuff. And I really, really want to get better at it. So that's one of my goals for this year, is to jump in and do some. So I've been, you know, thinking about yarns for that. So this would make a really pretty pair of mitts. I might add a little bit of this Jamieson's Shetland Spindrift, which I have a bunch of single balls of Jamieson's in my stash from a hat project I bought a few years back, which came with like 20 different colors in these 25-gram balls. And then I never made the hat, and I don't know if I want to make the hat right now. So I'm trying to use these for some other things, and I thought that might, I don't know if you can tell, oh, it's not bad. It's a very plummy purple. I think the color is called Dusk, but it's a sort of, looks a little more brown there, but it is a dark, dark plummy purple with navy in it. And I thought that would be pretty there too. So I might use those 3 together. But yeah, I highly recommend, if you're interested in Tuku wool, check out, particularly if you're interested in Tuku wool and you live in Canada, check out Farm to Cable on, I just Googled her and her shop comes right up. So those are the acquisitions. As I mentioned on my last podcast, I have had a few sweater lot acquisitions since the beginning of the year. And I just ordered one more today from Beaverside Dry Goods. But I'm going to show those to you as I work on the projects for them, rather than hauling them all out at once. But so this was my before Christmas one. I'm trying to buy, in terms of sweater lot stuff, for a while I used to buy sweater lots of yarn, just buy stuff I saw, if it was on sale, if it was pretty, if I liked it, whatever. And I didn't really have a project in mind. So I'm trying to really go the other direction with it now and pick projects I want to do, and then find yarn to match some of those sweater projects I really want to make. And take my time over really being sure that that's a pattern I want to make and getting the right yarn for it and stuff. So I have acquired a few yarns that are dedicated to specific sweaters that I hope to knit this year. And as I said, I'll show them to you as I work on them. So that's everything for today. The only other thing I was going to talk about was a little bit about why I've been so busy. For most of you who've watched this podcast before know I work in professional theater. I'm a stage manager, among a few other things I do in the theater. But right now I'm stage managing a show, and when I'm in rehearsals, we rehearse 6 days a week. I'm usually there about 9 hours a day, 6 days a week, until we get into tech, which is putting all of the technical elements into the play. And then often we work 10 or 12 hours a day through that process. So my non-work hours get super, super limited, but I'm really enjoying the play I'm working on right now. Is called Constellations, and it's a beautiful it's a two-hand play. It's a man and a woman in the story, and it's a story about life and death and love, and it's beautiful and funny, and heartwarming and tender and sad and all those sorts of things all kind of wrapped up together. It focuses a lot on one of the characters in it is a quantum cosmologist, which quantum cosmology is a kind of theoretical physics, as I understand it. And it focuses on the macro universe, atoms and molecules, but it also looks a lot at time and how time functions, and specifically this play deals a lot with the theories in quantum cosmology and in certain kinds of theoretical physics and general relativity and all those things. There are theories about time, and if you know at all about Stephen Hawking and his brief history of time that he wrote, the book he wrote, and other physicists who have written some more popular kind of books over the last few years, that there's one of the theories is string theory, which is the idea that there are multiple strings of time, and that it's a way of looking at time very differently than how we generally think of it, which is starts here, goes here, ends here, and it's all just linear and one time and one quantum cosmology and quantum physics and stuff sort of deal with the idea that there are many universes, and that when we make a choice in life, we go down one path, and that's our future and that's our universe. But if we had made a different choice, we would have gone into a different path in a different universe. And it's much more complex than that, and I don't fully understand it all. I'll be super honest with you. But in this play, what's really lovely is it deals with the idea of choice in relationships, choice in having a relationship, not having a relationship, how you are in a relationship, how you are with other people, all those sorts of things, and the idea that there are multiple possible outcomes. So we actually see there are a number of scenes in this play when the couple first meets, their first date, they break up. So first they break up and then they get back together again. These sort of key times in their relationship, but we see each scene over a number of times, and each one is different because they're slightly different people and different things happen and they end differently. So the scene starts out pretty much the same each time and then becomes a little bit different. So it's really fun and it's really interesting. The two actors in it are really lovely. So I'm really enjoying that. And I have had, actually, as I said, quite a lot of sock knitting time while I've been sitting in the room in rehearsal. We're about to start into our tech this week, so life gets more hectic for about a week or two. But then I will have a bit more time. I should be able to podcast again within about 2 weeks. I will have a little bit more daytime hours as we move into running the show, because then I'm working mostly nights. And my husband's going to be away for a little while, so I'll have daytimes and I'll be home alone in the daytime. So I'm sure I'll be able to get a podcast in in about 2 weeks' time. Until then, it was really nice to chat with you today, and I hope you'll have a great couple of weeks. And until I talk to you again, happy knitting.